Good morning. It being 7:35, I'd like to call the December 1st meeting of the Capital Planning Committee to order. We have a lot on our agenda today. Before we get into the actual hearing some more about various projects, I'd like to just mention some of the handouts that we have this morning for the committee. We have minutes from our last meeting on November 17th. We also have a updated recapture list from Darlene Lucier, our town accountant, and you'll see this list. Darlene had told you at the last meeting that she was working on updating a couple of facilities projects with our facilities director, and you see the total recapture amount on this sheet is it's $180,571.98. So we'll have just over $180,000 available to help fund this year's FY19 or the coming year capital plan. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. Secondly, we have a memo from the Information Technology Capital Advisory Committee, and this is a committee that meets usually around October each year, and they study the IT requests from both for the Chelmsford Public Schools and for the municipal government. And their role is to coordinate, look at all the projects and coordinate a technology plan for capital investment. And the memo, they reviewed all of the projects. I have a memo dated November 27th. I just wanted to read into the record that the IT Capital Advisory Committee held a meeting on October 24th to assist with the development of a coordinated plan for school and municipal technology projects. And the committee is made up of our citizen members, Christopher LaValle, John Moses, and Matthew Serpone. It also includes municipal and school staff, Ted Luter, our IT director, Matt Hall, network manager, myself as finance director, Bill Silver, school technology director, Mike Harridan, library technology facilities manager, Brian Herzog, and Dan Sylvia, telemedia coordinator. Also in attendance was Jay Lane, superintendent of schools. And the committee reviewed the status of all the technology projects presented from our last year's budget. They also reviewed all of the projects recommended for fiscal year 19. And after reviewing each project with the school and municipal technology directors, the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of 3 town technology projects totaling $279,000 and 4 school technology projects totaling $496,220, contingent upon Mr. Silva providing answers to questions asked by Mr. Serpone. And I know that Mr. Serpone met with Bill right after that meeting, so I did not hear anything back on that, so those questions were answered. So this, basically what happens is that committee does a preliminary review, and then it comes to this board to review those projects along with all the other needs. So I just wanted to enter that into the record. And I believe that's all the handouts that we have that were updated. First for our reports and hearings this morning, first on the agenda is Tricia Doris, our town clerk, and Tricia's project is number 4 on your detail sheet. So I'd like to turn it over to Tricia.
Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to be able to talk about this project, even though typically people wouldn't think this was a very exciting project. Records management is not typically considered a very, inspiring type of a project. But as you can see from the display I have here, it's very necessary at this point. We're a very old town. Our records have been moved around quite a bit over the years. We have had issues where our oldest, most precious permanent records are in dire need of restoration. And we're going to be in this building a long time. It's a 100-year-old building. We've moved from the Old Town Hall and the First Parish Church. I don't expect that we're going to be going anywhere soon. Ideally, in a perfect world, we'd have one vault space for all of our permanent records, but we don't. So in this building, we have 6 different file storage locations. We have the treasurer's vault on the first floor, the town clerk's vault on the first floor. We have a room designated for planning and zoning and our elections on the lower level, as well as the town clerk's historic records vault on the lower level. And then there are 2 file storage rooms in the basement level, the gym level. One is called SBO3, which is on the left side of the gym, and one is SBO4 on the right side of the gym. This is where all of the town's documents are stored for the various town departments. So this is a 5-year plan that isn't just about clerk records. This is about a records management plan for all departments in town. This, just to point out, these were pulled from some of the vault down in the lower level from the clerk's vault, just to show the deterioration that's taking place. Our vaults are not climate controlled currently. They're not humidity controlled. And we've had inappropriate shelving for many years, a lot of wooden shelving, which contains, holds moisture, can have insects, it wears down the bindings. So I'm gonna very carefully, first I'm gonna show you this lovely Miller Lite box, which is where our oldest birth records that are not bound are held. And this has been in our vault for quite some time. I don't know the year of the Miller Lite box, but these dates are 1896 to 1919. Our birth records are just housed loosely in here. So that's obviously insufficient for archival storage. This is one of our Board of Selectmen minutes books from 1898 to 1908. They've lost the front of the cover. You can see the binding is deteriorating. These books all need to be restored. The restoration part of it, I can explain a little bit more in the details. These are our oldest death records, marriage records. As you can see, the bindings are deteriorating. We have very interesting books that have been stored on top of other books, where the imprints from other books are on top of them. Pages are turning into dust. And we've had backs of books that we will find eventually where this goes to. But again, this is all part of the historic restoration project. Before we can seriously address that, we need to address the way our public records are being stored. So, like I said, we had 6 storage spaces, but I wanted you to also know that this isn't just the first time that we've been working on this. We've had to do a lot of preliminary work. Irina Maloney, the previous clerk, had, back in 2013, the Northeast Document Conservation Center came in and they did a report on the collection and of the assessment of the town records, mostly focused on the clerk records at that time. And they also did a report on the preservation needs of those historic records. So we've been doing a lot of preliminary legwork on what's the inventory that we have here, what's the condition of all the records that we have here, what do we need to do to put together a records management plan, what do we need, we had in 2013 also, we had a climate control data logger put into the vault spaces that house our most precious permanent records. We have data on that that shows those needs. And then most recently, since I've become clerk, we've established a public records advisory committee to help with prioritizing what are our most at-risk records and what the best plan of action is going forward from here. We did receive a small grant. Again, we're trying to take little bites of the very large apple. And we did get a small grant from CPC recently for $15,000, which will probably only cover restoring maybe 4 to 6 volumes of the most at-risk records that we have. So we're in the process right now of choosing which of those 4 to 6 volumes we'll be sending out for restoration. So this has been an ongoing project. Some of the New England Document Conservation Center's recommendations are listed above. Number 1, creating HVAC climate zones for storage vaults. Some of these things we're not addressing right now. Motion sensitive lighting, which would be nice. Right now I just would like appropriate lighting so that we can see what we're working on. The fire suppression system was added when the fire department was put in. We do have appropriate fire suppression systems in the treasurer's vault and the town clerk's vault. And then they had other recommendations as well that, maybe someday we can move forward with those key card security systems, things like that. I wanted to also show you what kind of progress we've made to date so far. We did take some of our budget money this year, and this is the the town clerk's vault on the lower level, where you can see the Miller Lite box sitting on the shelf right there. So that's what their records were looking like. They're on metal shelving that was kind of pulling away from the walls. The bindings of the books are all askew. We did purchase through our operational budget some side-to-side mobile storage, and that's expandable. So we're going to keep working on our lower level clerk's vault in that way. We keep our the records that we have to access on a most regular basis up in our vault in our office. But these are our permanent records, our vital records, all of the things that we have to keep town meeting minutes, our most at-risk records are kept in this vault. So also our election materials used to be kept in that vault, so we were always having to move them around to access our records. We now have an election storage closet that's part of the room that the planning and zoning files are gonna be in, and so that's much better. The only thing we have to do with that is vent two sides of that room so that we can get the air conditioning that's currently in the room into this storage closet. This is where our voting tabulators are held, so that's why the climate control is important. You can see that the boxes on the top, that's the way we should be, not on top of each other, but we're going to be moving forward from 2 cubic foot boxes to 1 by 2 cubic foot boxes for safety reasons and for indexing and ease of accessibility for all of our records. We've also started a digitization project with Boston Public Library. You may or may not have noticed, again, not too many people may look at it, but a lot of people that do research do. On the town clerk's page, we have a link to historic records. We have just recently gotten back from the Boston Public Library, our selectmen meeting minutes from 1898 to 2010 are done. All of our election results, our historic town records, annual town reports, resident lists from 1896. These are all online currently, and it's something that we can do every year. We can add another collection, and Boston Public Library will put them online. We provide an index with the links, and it's been really helpful for us to be able to find records and also for the public to be able to access these records. The town clerk's vault, we've made some progress, but this is where we're starting to look at, okay, we need to do some improvements. So that's the vault in our office. There's a lot of wooden shelving. There's a shelf above the door with a gate that's very sharp, that when we're up on a ladder and we're trying to access things above the door, we have these cardboard boxes. You can't really see them, but I put them on top so that we don't come down with our elbow, on top of that thing. So it's very precarious. The wooden shelving, again, is not good for permanent records. So we're proposing a design that's going to make everything a little bit easier to access, but also to protect the records. The biggest problem is these older indexes that are in the back. I'll show you. Yeah, those older indexes, you can see that the wooden shelving is actually deteriorating underneath it, and then what it's doing to the bottom of the bindings. So it may not be an exciting project, but you can see it's very necessary for us to do. And the proposed solution for my clerk's vault would have all the indexes being laid on rollers flat. So we'd have to restore those books, but then have them in appropriate shelving with the rollers. The environmental control situation, we did work with Kathleen Canavan to get estimates on how to address the environmental issues, the humidity and the temperature. The temperature is a little better now since we've gotten these AC units in our office. We just keep the vault door open and it keeps the temperature a little bit more regulated, but we do have costs built into the 2019 for the town clerk's vault to be the first to be regulated by the environmental. I don't know what lumens are and all of that stuff, but I wanted to put the data up there for you, what the readings were versus what the recommendations are, just so that you had that. The planning and zoning storage is really rather interesting. We have, currently, you can see we're kind of in flux. The picture on the left-hand side, the black filing cabinets have been moved many different times. I don't think the planning and zoning files have really been efficiently accessible for a long time. They haven't made sense for a long time because those files used to be filed by applicant and not by address. So we currently have someone working on temporary person working on addressing every single one of those files, going through purging the records, making sure we only have the documents that are needed for, I'm sorry, I should be addressing you guys. So only to be, to purge the records that aren't permanent records, and then to make sure that they're re-alphabetized appropriately so that we can find things. We also have duplicates with planning and zoning files, the active files that is used in community development and the town clerk's files. We're hoping to eventually merge them both, so we have one set of accurate, complete, permanent records for planning and zoning. The design also encompasses, you'll see there's some white boxes behind those tan filing cabinets. That's the building department's maps. And again, they're all just stacked up boxes, very difficult for us to find. The map tower is you can't really see it because the mobile units are to the side, but there'll be a map tower with a map table, and everything would be laid flat. This is the most expensive type of filing system, But for planning and zoning, we are proposing that we use these mobile storage devices because it's much more appropriate to file things in boxes rather than in hanging folders. Again, we're talking about permanent records that we have to keep forever, and 100 years from now, they have to be able to find them. So this is the proposed design. They are expandable. So, right now it shows a design for maximum build-out. The treasurer's vault, we've been sharing space, the treasurer's vault, with the clerk. There's a lot of maps and ZBA files up also in the treasurer's vault. Our goal is to bring all like files together. So that cage that currently sits in the treasurer's vault separates the clerk's records from the treasurer's records. We want to remove that cage and give the treasurer more space, and again, appropriate shelving. You can see how boxes are stacked on top of boxes. There's insufficient lighting in that vault. He only has that one strip of fluorescent lighting and nothing in the back. So if we can remove the cage, get all the maps that are currently up there downstairs to the planning and zoning room, and give a more appropriate storage area for the treasurer to keep his permanent records and also the records that he has to cycle through based on the retention schedule. So that's again the design. I worked with DuPont Storage System on the design, and the Kathleen Canavan Facilities to work on the construction costs and the removal of the old shelving and things like that, and adding the appropriate lighting, as well as the environmental controls. You won't see the treasurer's vault and the lower level clerk's vault. We've got it in 2020 because it was recommended by the vendor that we work on those two vaults simultaneously because they're on top of each other. So the town clerk's vault in my office is proposed for 2019, and then the environmental controls for the treasurer's vault and the lower level clerk's vault for 2020. The basement storage, thank you very much, facilities, for cleaning this up. This was our catch-all room. This is a room that has departmental files. The problem with this room, number one, it was kind of the catch-all, so there's a lot of junk that we had to get rid of. But also, they're very deep scaffolding shelving, and they're using these heavy 2-foot boxes, two cubic foot boxes, and you cannot access what's behind them. It's too heavy to pull things off. So basically, people put things in this room, and then we just leave them there. They're not properly indexed, they're not properly inventoried, and they haven't been purged in quite some time. So this room, I'm proposing to make this the new accounting storage room, because wait till you see what they've been dealing with. Because this is a better lighting, it's a nice cool room, it's well lit, and they won't have some of the obstacles that they have currently, which is, there's the design for this room, this is what our accounting department is currently dealing with. They have files that they have to access on a regular basis, and they have to keep for a certain period of time. Their payroll records are permanent, but they are accessing their records constantly. Again, very deep scaffolding shelving, very heavy 2-foot boxes. There's also a concrete pad on the floor where it used to be a locker room, so the lockers used to sit, which is a trip hazard. And it's just a dangerous situation for them to deal with. So they're in the process right now of converting to the smaller boxes, and then my proposal is to make the SBO4 room, do that room first, get that all inventoried, all need, everything, and then set a space aside for them to be able to put their records over in that room while we deal with this room. This room is all wooden shelving you can't see it, but on the left-hand side, and it's got all the commitment books from the treasurer's office, and those are all permanent records, and again, they're older books similar to these over many years. It should not be housed on wooden shelving. The windows need to be filtered on any of the storage rooms that have direct sunlight coming in. And there's also an election closet in there that we don't need anymore that we can take out. So my proposal is to take our community band storage, which is currently in the other room I showed you, SBO4, and move that where you see those boxes there on the other side of that concrete pad, so that nobody has to deal with the trip hazard of that. So this would, again, it's a very simple design, but it's appropriate shelving, and it's all box storage versus, book storage versus the hanging files and things like that right now are not appropriate for permanent records. Again, this is the lower level town clerk's vault, and I just wanted to show you the readings of what the temperature was versus what was recommended. This is the vault that I'm proposing for also 2020 to add the HVAC and humidity control. And that's all I have. The preservation piece, we had gotten an estimate from CoFile, which had an inventory of all of our records, and what the records could look like before versus what they would look like after preservation, which just, again, Mylar sleeving and easier accessibility. And one of the goals of the Public Records Advisory Committee is also to establish, like I said, a permanent records management plan for all departments. So this is the first of a 5-year plan, and I think everything that's on there for this year is the start, and it gets its most expensive this year, and it as we move forward, it'll get a little bit less expensive. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Are, in records like that, your old birth and death records, are they digitized somewhere?
They are, the actual vital records aren't yet. That's on my next collection, because when I had to do one for this year, I had just become clerk, and I had to say, okay, what do I know where everything is, and what do I know hasn't been done yet? So I just gathered up the selectmen minutes, and we did that one for this year. All of my vital records indexes and the vital records historic up to 1920 will be done as part of next year's collection for digitization. You don't want to digitize birth records or marriage records for people that are currently alive, even though they're public records. You just don't want to put it out there online. And with the Boston Public Library project, everything we give them is online. So yeah, we'll be doing all of our vital records next year. It's going to be a big project.
All the vaults are fire protection, will have fire protection?
We have sprinklers in all of the storage rooms. The town clerk's vault, Gary, you can help me.
It's all dry.
Is all dry
Like it's supposed to be.
in the
Not like
actual
it's-
vaults. Yeah, so the treasurer's vault, the town clerk's 2 vaults are all
Yes.
dry. Yeah, and that's where the permanent records will be.
Okay, so all of the permanent record storage would be with dry fire suppression.
That's what we have in our vault space
All right.
currently. Yeah.
For about 3 years.
Yeah. So planning zoning room, not so much, but
Well, everything's got sprinklers.
sprinklers, everything's
Yeah,
sprinkled.
sprinklers.
The
Yeah.
entire building is.
Right, the
On
planning and
those
zoning
kind of
room used to
records,
be.
you want dry, not wet.
Right. That used to be the recycling office and whatever else it was before, but all the vault space is dry. Anybody else have any questions?
Any more questions for Tricia? Great. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next on our agenda are 2 school facilities projects. These are projects number 18 and 19 in your detail sheets. With us this morning, we have our Public Works Director, Gary Persichetti. We also have school administration in attendance. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. This year, we come to you with 2 projects, so short on the list, but high on the price. Basically, we're talking about 2 parking lots at the school department. The first one is Chelmsford High School, which for the most part is original 72. There's a section that was redone when the pack was put on to that. And again, just to speak to that a little bit, like everything else, when when the vote was not to back a major project to build a new school, and we were given $31 million, you have to do some changes to it. And of course, the original carried granite curbing. It did not end up with granite curbing based on the fact that you had to bring those prices down. So the goal is to come back and redo this parking lot, which is way past its own lifetime, as you can see from one of the pictures, and the fact that most of it is original 72. With this upgrade, we're talking about we're talking about all the parking, we're talking about all the sidewalks, all the curbing going to granite, so that this entire building becomes virtually new space. After talking with the school department and the superintendent, of course, we know, the town knows that there's a chit-in with MSBA, but no matter what we do, this building's not going anywhere. So we don't see it as an issue that, you know, we might be dumping money into something that's not gonna be there. It is. Because, you know, all the talk from those meetings, if you built a new high school, this may become the full middle school, so it's not going anywhere. To be honest with you, the cost of this building was just under $2 million. Talking to Steve Yonley, my assistant DPW director, and using the highway department for some of the demolition and definitely for the drainage work, we brought the price down so that we can make it more palatable to get this done. So if you have questions on the high school, I'll answer them. If not, I'll take you to Parker.
So Gary, you're saying some of the work would actually be done by DPW?
Yes, any drainage work after we rip up, is like anything else, over the years, you find spots that you feel hold water. So if we have to add drainage or any of that, any needs repair, we look at pipes, they look like they're too old and they need to be replaced, we would do that.
So how is that gonna get, how would that get funded?
Well, it's in here, but I'm saying,
Oh, okay.
if you took it all and gave it out, the entire job, you were at like 1.9 and some change, just for the high school.
Okay.
The Parker School itself, just to give you some insight to that, the Parker School has had 2 good upgrades during the years, and a lot of it had to do with the portable classroom. So the entire side where the gym has been redone, the entire rear where the pods were added when we had 4 and went to 8. The front, during a renovation, did get some asphalt around the gazebo area and where the little parking is some years ago, and that was it. Their curbing from the TV studio entrance, which we call it, all the way around to past the playground, is all original to the building. There isn't much left as far as their curbing goes, because it was never granted at the beginning. So this $189,000 is to take care of that entire front. It's similar to the high school, but it's isolated to that portion. And then we believe that building will be fine for years to come.
Can I ask the question?
Sure.
If you had to choose between the 2 projects, which would you say was the more urgent?
That's a very hard one to do, because if you want to say, I'd have to say the parking lot of the high school is more urgent, but I have to say the sidewalk of the Parker is more urgent. Meaning the deterioration, the trip hazards versus the high school on a whole. Parker's way worse, but parking lot-wise, it reverts the other way. And the problem with this type of work is it's not something you want to do only part of. Because when you start mixing and matching that, like for instance, curbing alone, when you go to put your curbing in, you have to take your old curbing out, you have to give like 3 feet in front of it, then you have to install your new curbing, you have to put cement behind it, which is what holds it in. So to do partial of that and not do the rest of the lot, or what's in front of it, really doesn't make much sense in reality.
Any other questions for Gary on those projects? All right, great. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
I guess I do have one about
Sure.
the high school. Is that like a driving hazard because you have teenage drivers in there?
It's a combination of that and a combination of the fact that when your asphalt gets to a certain point in time, there's no point of where you can make a clean saw cut and replace sections, and that's about where we are with a good portion of that lot.
Okay.
Especially the one that leads from basically the stadium up towards the Harrington School.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda, we have 3 school information technology projects. These are numbers 20, 21, and 22. And I'd like to invite Bill Silver, School Technology Director, to present those. Good morning, Bill.
Just want to give you a handout as well. I made about this via email last night. This was the detail sheet. About the preschool projects. I got it. Okay, so we're proposing 3 projects for technology for the school department. One of those is a upgrade to network infrastructure. One is for classroom technology, and one is for security camera upgrades. And we'll take the network infrastructure first. Last year, we were able to complete a network infrastructure project at Parker Middle School, where we put in all new switching, all new access points. What we have there now is a really enhanced and viable network to connect any number of devices that we need to, and keep them connected and have very good throughput and a very reliable network. And we'd like to do the same thing. This particular set of projects would be for the McCarthy Middle School, the Harrington Elementary, and the Center Elementary. And we have the ability to utilize some federal funding to pay for a portion of these projects. And that's what I've kind of broken out for you in the handouts. So what you'll see here is the McCarthy. I've given you a breakdown of what each portion of the project will cost for switching, access points, new racking, cabling, and then the engineering and labor costs. And then what at the bottom, you'll see a total cost and what the E-rate discount would be for each building. So you have that for each of the 3 schools. The plan moving forward would be to take any remaining viable equipment that's in those buildings and move it into any of the buildings that we're not going to do a full upgrade on this year. And we did that last year with Parker's equipment. We were able to bring all of the pods online with equipment that was still reasonably functional, and we moved all of their access points into other buildings to try to stabilize Wi-Fi at these other buildings. So we do the exact same thing here. And the reason that this is important for us to consider is twofold. One, we're trying to do a lot more with integration practice with our staff and our students. And that's first and foremost, there's 180 days of instruction, and we want kids to be able to use technology and teachers to teach with technology every day. Second, we now have to test all of our kids online for the next generation MCAS. The state this year wants us to test every single grade level. We're simply not at a place where we can do that with the infrastructure that's in place. Last year, we tested grades 4 and 8. And it went well, and it will go better this year because we have a middle school that's been completely redone. But by next year, they're going to want us to test every grade level online. And we need to put ourselves in a position to be able to do that and not have a lot of issues when we go to test. So those are the 2 big reasons why we need to complete these projects. And as you look down the capital plan, the plan would be to do the rest of the elementary schools in 2020, and then look at where we are with the high school in 2021. Can I answer any questions on this project?
If you had to choose which schools...
This is becoming a theme.
Sorry.
your favorite.
Sorry to be the person, but what are your priorities here?
Well,
If you were gonna choose, like, say you could only do 1, or you could do 2, what's your 1, 2, and 3?
yeah, you need to complete the middle school because that's where your largest number of test takers reside.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most crucial, without a doubt.
Okay, thank you.
Billy, could you live without the switches? In other words, if we were able to repurpose those switches to, say, here or some other departments, would that be a problem for you, the switches that you're gonna be replacing?
One of the problems that we currently face is that a lot of our switches are out of ports, and we can't plug anything else into them. So they're at capacity. And in order to upgrade the Wi-Fi, I need more ports. So they kind of go hand in hand. And then the other piece that we're trying to accomplish is to enhance security at all of the schools, and that requires additional ports for cameras and door swipes and things like that. So this plan, it's built out to accommodate anything that we would add, and then give us 20% overhead as far as port count goes, so we could grow into the switches that we install.
Bill, could I ask, one of the questions, one of the ideas that came up as we were going through the capital plan is the switches that are gonna be removed from either McCarthy or these two elementary schools, if these could be repurposed towards the town side, we may be able to significantly reduce one of the town IT projects on here. So if that's a possibility, if you know,
It
those
is.
could be repurposed.
So further into this set of documents, there's an inventory of what I have for switching. And these projects, we would recapture 21 switches. 6 of those are end of life, so I wouldn't want to put those into the town at all. But we have 15 left over from that batch. I need 6 minimally to replace other end-of-life switches that I have in other buildings. And I was going to take the remaining 9 and put some into the high school where I'm out of ports, but we can certainly, I'm sure, find enough to help the town do what they need to do.
Okay, that's great.
Do you know how many they're looking for?
I believe they were looking in the neighborhood of 12, somewhere around there, so if 9 sounds like it's a good number, plus if you can find any others, like as I say, I know they wouldn't be looking for end of life, but if there's any that are not an end of life, that would definitely be a help.
What is the value of that, Joe?
I would have to talk to Ted, but I believe it would be somewhere between 50 to 70,000, somewhere in there.
So, Bill, you mentioned in your presentation a minute ago that there were issues with MCAS trying to accomplish the goals. What specific issues were there with the existing infrastructure?
So, well, last year we did run into Wi-Fi issues. You know, we had to maneuver access points from some areas of the building into the test-taking areas of the building, which leaves some areas without any access to wireless. Connectivity was really the biggest component. Anything that was wired in worked well. Anything that was wireless, once we sort of rerouted some of the access points around the building, we got a pretty good signal, and it was pretty successful. But we don't have the equipment to be able to accommodate that this year. And just looking at our middle schools, we have to test 2 more grades online this year, and it's going to be a challenge at the McCarthy, not at the Parker. The Parker's fine. But at the McCarthy, I need to be able to test in 8 different locations to get that number of kids through the testing. And I have, right now, probably 6 viable areas that we can test in. So I have to come up with a plan to get 2 more areas and equipment in there to be able to test those kids. And that's not even every grade level this year.
So, who's doing the design work?
Last year, we used a company called Wally Computer Associates. They're one of the largest state contract vendors, and they performed all of the engineering on the Parker.
So did they come in for the Wi-Fi and actually do a full survey?
Yes,
They did an RF survey?
yes.
So that's how you got when I look at the count for McCarthy, currently you're indicating there's 51 access points in the building. You're doubling that to 103
Right,
in this request?
right. And part of the reason for that, and you have a background in this as well, so we're going for 802.11 AC,
Yeah.
which, as you know, doesn't really pass through concrete.
It does, but
It's difficult, right? So we're putting one in every classroom, so that becomes sort of its own independent bubble that will support any number of devices that we can throw at it in that classroom.
how many square feet is McCarthy? Do you know, Doug?
entire building?
The entire building, approximately. Or Gary, I don't know if you know.
I wanna say, just under 150.
150,000 square feet? Okay. Thank you. John, the advisory committee, in your notes that you sent out here, there were some questions.
Yeah, everyone voted in favor. There was a member of the committee that had some questions. Actually, the member's here today, but I know Matt's in the audience, but he met with Bill after the meeting, and so what we did is, since we met that one night, we took a contingent vote based on, Bill providing answers to the members' questions. And then I know they met afterwards to discuss it in further detail. So, that committee made a favorable recommendation to this committee, and then this committee usually kind of delves in a little more and reviews the projects, but,
And another question, John, in capital, what I notice here is we have a request for 3 years of 24/7 support. Can we include 3 years in a capital project, or? I thought for some reason we were limited to just the first year.
yeah, generally the support contracts are usually funded through operating budgets. I mean, that's how I've always looked at it. Most of our support contracts, I believe, are funded, in your operating budget. The actual purchase and installation of the equipment you can do through capital.
Okay. And Bill, so why are you requesting 24/7 support?
So these are built out according to, E-rate regulations, not necessarily, a capital regulation. I didn't know that you couldn't have a 3-year support, so I can see if I can back that down to 1 year. And we can look at a different route to fund the additional years. But that's typically when you buy up front, you generally get a 3-year type of warranty with all this equipment, because E-rate and state contract forces vendors to give you that type of warranty with their equipment. I can't buy from someone who's only gonna give me a 90-day warranty or something like that. They must cover things for 3 years.
No, I'm just saying 24/7 is pretty expensive typically.
I think he's saying that actually just comes with the package when you buy those particular,
So you don't save any money by reducing it all, so.
I'll definitely look into the fact if we can or we can't, but that's generally the standard purchase when we open a school.
And then there'll be ongoing support costs, correct? You're gonna have,
support would be through the regular operating budget.
okay. What about training? You're gonna have a hybrid system with multiple vendors.
Which we have right now.
Yeah, you've created an environment which we have a hybrid with multiple vendors, so are there additional training costs for your staff?
What we were able to do this year with the Parker project is HP gave us access to their engineers for our network manager to work with. I always like to train staff and keep their skills, cutting edge, but it's not something that a provision for in here, but something that a local operating budget would cover if we need additional training.
Okay, any other questions? And Billy, you're welcome to go through the other, if you want to speak on the other two, classroom technology and the security cameras.
So classroom technology, many people at this table have heard this for several years, and we're down to about the last 25 rooms that we need to to get some kind of an interactive technology into. So I'm requesting, similarly to last year, $75,000 to accomplish the remainder of these rooms and finish that project off.
I'm so happy to hear this. But I noticed in your capital plan going out, you still got the $75,000. Is that like just forgot to delete it going forward?
So unfortunately, what you're going to run into is that some of these devices are 10, 11 years old, and now they're coming to end of their useful life. And, you know, it's either we have to make bigger chunks out of this and finish it in a more timely fashion, or, you know, kind of continue to roll it through and now start replacing some of these 10-plus-year-old items that are out there.
Just for a second, when you talked a little bit about this last year, I know, we had a good discussion about what should be capital, what should be cloud operating budget, things along those lines. And at that point in time, there were a little over 50 classrooms that still didn't have the technology. And we had like 2 years left last year, or the current year, where it was 1 year, and then next year was the last year. So we said we at least wanted to see the project forward because it had been going on for like 9 or 10 years or something. So this is technically the last year of funding that we talked about to at least outfit all the rooms one time with technology. I partially left that on there as a placeholder for us to be kind of having some conversations, you know, even internally with the school committee and others about what do we want the longer term strategy to be. You know, if capital isn't going to be a source for this kind of outfitting of classrooms with equipment in the future, we need to find another source. We can't just not invest in technology and do upgrades. So it's as much a placeholder for us to remember that we need to come back and continue having the discussion as it is, you know, just finding what is going to be that right kind of funding mechanism. But as we talked about last year, when this got funded, we were very appreciative because we were able to knock off a good number of rooms this year, and it really leaves us with the, if you fund the 19 budget, then that will kind of completely outfit us. And then I think we still need to kind of have that long-term talk. We'll need to have it as a school committee, and then obviously come back and we'll work with Paul and John in the town and kind of figure out what we want to do longer term. So it's more of a placeholder at this point.
Okay.
What technologies are you putting in now?
What we've been installing are something called Clear Touch interactive televisions. So they're a 75-inch display that have up to 20 points of touch. Teachers, kids can all be at the screen at the same time and interact with it. And they've been really well received so far.
So how many, so you put those in last year, you're proposing putting that in?
We're going to continue down that path. They're, you know, they're very sturdy. We don't have to worry about new bulbs for them. They're much more energy efficient. So all around, they're a good fit. The final piece that we're requesting is a security camera upgrade. We asked for cameras last year, and what that was able to do was to give us an entire perimeter view of all of our schools, which the police have access to. Lieutenant Spence was kind enough to walk all the buildings with us and make recommendations about where to place cameras and things like that. So now we're going to look to continue on the interior of buildings. And this is for the Parker School only because now they have an infrastructure that will support this increased security. So we're going to do the same thing with the police department, walk that building, get locations and find the best possible cameras to install there. I'm estimating that we can install somewhere around 21 cameras with this budget. And then as you'll notice in subsequent years, if we were to redo the infrastructure at 3 schools, I've looked ahead and budgeted a similar number for 2020 and then 2 schools for 21.
You have a big blip next year. You're going from 40 to 135,000.
Correct. So if we redid 3 buildings this year, McCarthy, Harrington, and Center, then I'd like to enhance their security the following year because we'd be able to accommodate those cameras then.
So you're saying
The
you're
security
redoing.
cameras basically kind of follow the infrastructure upgrade. So like, in 18, we did the infrastructure upgrade of Parker. So in 19, you're seeing the security camera upgrade because now they have the capacity and the ports to have the cameras. So in 19, if we're going to do the 3 middle school infrastructures, MacArthur and the 2 elementary. Then the year after, you're gonna see the request for the internal cameras at those 3 schools being upgraded. And then if we did infrastructure at the other 2 elementary schools next year, the year after would be like their inside. So everything is lagging a year to basically put the network in and provide the capacity and then do the install.
Is there a total plan for security? You've got a 3-year window that you're talking about here, but is there an integrated plan that says this is where we'll be at with X number of cameras per school covering all the different areas that you need to cover?
What we've been doing at this point in time is, it is really a little bit dependent on the infrastructure in the school being able to have the internal capacity and being able to add X number of cameras to the building. I can tell you that, we're very comfortable at this point in time with the exterior cameras that were either just added or upgraded. For the foreseeable future, probably the next, say, 5 years, we wouldn't be looking at additional cameras being necessary to the exterior parts of the building. And what we would like to do now is kind of focus on the inside. When we say the inside, though, we're only talking about kind of common spaces within the building, so it would be like your upgrades to, say, like your lobbies or your hallways, things like that, where kids can congregate. The cameras near all of your interior and exterior doors to be able to kind of track traffic coming and going, but it wouldn't be getting into like classrooms or anything like that. But what we would be doing is basically working, if approved, working with the vendor to actually do the walkout of that particular building and figure out what makes the most sense as far as kind of where to locate the cameras and how, and trying to keep up with the technology that just keeps updating every year.
We sort of have a blueprint to work from. We've done this in the high school, by working with the vendor, with the police department to get cameras specific to where the police department would want them and things like that. So it's not like we haven't done that before. It's just a matter of taking that experience that we have and pushing it out into these other schools.
And just one last thing, to go further, like what we have done typically is just taken the costs of the most recent upgrades to, say, cameras or systems, and just escalated that out in the future years. Because if we're looking like 2 years or 3 years down the line to do an upgrade in a couple of middle schools and the high school, we don't have updated quotes right now to say like what system would be installed, because things are gonna change 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah.
But we're using the current cost just as a projection as far as going into the budgeting.
I'm less concerned about the cost per se, as more concerned that, do you have a total plan? So it sounds like you're just doing an ad hoc based on the budget request, saying we want to cover something, some areas, additional areas.
This really is, it's budget driven. And I think it's a lot of now we're into the interior security cameras. It's access and ability to be able to upgrade and put them in. So any of our kind of security upgrades at this point in the interior of the buildings are really dependent on the infrastructure being able to support them. So it is budget driven.
Okay, great. Further questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your thoroughness.
Just for the committee members that are volunteers, we're nearing 8:30. Does everyone feel comfortable continuing to meet for about another, most likely we'll be here for about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes, depending on discussion. Does anyone have we do have staff and a citizen member. Does anyone have any questions or comments before the committee starts our deliberation phase?
I had one question
Yep.
for you.
Could I just ask, if you could just use this just so people can hear it?
Sorry, I would have asked it earlier. I didn't know we were moving. I just had a question about the refresh rate on the switches. What typically, in your assessment, how often do they need to be refreshed?
Usually, I would say you got a minimum of 5 to 6 years that you can live with certain switching. Where we're at right now, we have a capacity for a max of 1 gig throughput, switch to switch. you know, and 10 gig is pretty much the standard right now. I'd say if we did these, we can expect 5 to 6 years minimum that we'd be okay with these switches.
So the reason I ask that is because we go back to look at the previous capital budgets. In 2014, $180,000 were spent on wireless, 195 on PoE switches. In 2015, there were 120,000 spent on additional PoE switches, 75,000 on wireless. 2016, 80,000 on wireless, and $80,000 on switch replacements. So I'm just, based on that refresh cycle, do you expect you'll need additional switches come 2023?
No, once these are complete, we won't need to perform anything else, but this type of budgeting that you've seen in the past is why we have sort of a mishmash of equipment in each one of these buildings. And, you know, nothing comes together cohesively like it's supposed to. It's best practice typically to do the entire project at once and not try to kind of push a couple
Piecemeal.
pieces here and a couple pieces there. That's why when I said I'll reclaim, you know, 21 switches, 15 are viable, but I have 6 on other buildings that, you know, are end of life at this point. So, to me, the best way forward is to replace the whole thing at once and not sort of put ones and twos here and there.
Okay, that's all, just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Now we'll move, next on our agenda, we'll move into deliberation phase. Paul has graciously volunteered to work the computer. We have a spreadsheet that you've seen in years past, and this is just a worksheet. It lists all of the projects, and then we have 2 columns where funded, and then we can also put holds on things. So typically what we've done, it's been our practice in the past, is we move through the projects in numerical order. Committee members can place a hold on something, and then it allows us to kind of, doing it in this fashion, we kind of prioritize the projects that everyone agrees that if you don't have an issue with it, you think it's a very high priority, we'll put that in the funded column, and then we can kind of work from there. So if that works for everyone, we'll just start moving through them in order, and committee members, you're welcome to, if you have a concern, you can place a hold, or we can go back to it. So the first is the IT infrastructure upgrade. That's the one that's funded at $90,000. As the municipal IT director indicated to me, if we're able to repurpose the switches that Bill talked about, we could probably reduce that by a good 50,000. So, all right.
That's the 90,000 would be reduced by 50?
Let's do, I'd recommend 40 just because he.
40,000.
We can come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's dependent though upon, you know, fully funding the school
Right.
request. So that's sort of the issue here.
Yeah.
So that 40 is the savings,
No, it's the net,
that's-
it's the funding level.
funding level, okay.
Funding level. So
Okay, because 50 of it, we're gonna get from the switches.
That would be the.
Yeah,
that would be
right,
the-
understood.
And the next one is the fiber extensions for 59,000. Those are lines that would be run to certain locations for security cameras and things.
Did we want to do that in phases? Because I think when the gentleman spoke, he did give us some sort of priority, didn't he?
No.
Said if you can't fund it all, this is.
That was
it's a good-
actually a security, the next project.
Oh, that's the next one,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the cost there, the big cost is going out to,
Self-load.
the
Self-load.
boat ramp.
The boat ramp, self-load.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
I'm
mean, what
not
I would-
inclined at this point, just because of other things coming. I think it's important, but I think roofs and parking lots are more important.
agreed.
Is it partial or zero?
I say zero at this point.
I'm just,
I
I just want to know a number.
mean, I would propose a partial, just for some of the, I mean, the boat ramp's gonna be the biggie.
I will say, we can come back to this. I will say the reason the IT department proposed that is there was a police department request, because I believe there was an incident at the boat ramp. I can't recall the specifics, but that's one of the reasons that they were asked to allow them to have, to allow the police to have video access to that site. We
Yeah.
can come back to that.
Just leave 0 now or put a number in? Or 0? 0 is a number, okay. All right.
Then item 3, project 3 is the IT security upgrades. This is the one that Ted indicated that if the door swipe component of this project was deferred, he could most likely take out $100,000 out of that. So
So
we can come back to that, but
funded at 30,000?
But then that includes cameras, but for areas that you're not gonna wire, right? Wasn't it like
Right,
cameras at
right.
South Well? So you,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's,
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the question. Are the cameras included in
no, it might,
2?
the note,
As I said, they kind of go hand
the
in
new
hand.
note I had was that 20,000 was for the
Right.
camera portion.
right, I know he needed some of that to work
Right.
with the other
So
projects.
if you're not gonna put the wiring, you don't need the cameras.
Right,
Right, yeah.
so that's why, I think, for number 2, there's some partial to do the low-hanging fruit, the connections to Roberts and McCarthy, and then a partial for number 3.
I funded both of them 100%. I fund both of them 100.
Okay.
Did you hear what I said?
He said he funded both of them partly.
Oh, no, I did. I said, I think you should fund both of them 100. I don't think you should have a deduction.
He wants 100.
Oh, 100% fund them?
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because to your point,
Well, either you fund them all, you don't fund one, it's like, we heard earlier, you don't
Go
fund
hand in hand,
the hand in
yeah.
hand, either you fund, or you fund like, if it's 189,000 total, if you take out the Southwell cameras and wiring, what's the number left? I don't know, is it 30,000? I don't know what the number is. Okay, we can move on, I don't wanna,
We'll be
Hold
out of
things up.
money halfway through this meeting.
I know.
all right, good,
Okay.
all right, good. Town clerk.
half. Can we do half?
I think it's a great project, but I mean,
What number?
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a terrible amount, but
My suggestion is somewhere around 60.
Fund 60 of it?
60, okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
Can we do that?
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
It's one small ball, I don't know
Right.
what you plan on accomplishing or not, maybe it's, the, HVAC and that stuff,
Or
and
just
no
like the
shelving.
storage
I
box.
didn't price the whole thing out personally, I know Kathleen helped.
So
So-
with the vault, I think the entire cost was broken out into HVAC, renovations, lighting, as well as shelving costs, and I don't know the specifics.
if I recall, there are really a number of different vaults. So
She's
there's,
only talking about just the
19.
one within the.
On sheet 4, it actually, yeah, 19.
It
yeah.
just says-
correct, but I'm looking at the 5-year plan and saying next year, there was another vault, so potentially flip it, do that vault for 54,000.
You could probably do that, approach it that way, or she'd break apart,
Yeah.
prioritize the vault.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it was a really well laid out plan,
Right.
just let's,
The one thing I'd say is the 2020 was actually the treasurer's vault, and although I'm not, want to speak on my own self, I consider my vault a lower priority than Trish's, so I mean, either the vault in her town clerk's office needs attention, or that planning board area downstairs, it's fresh in my mind because we just happened to tour them yesterday.
okay.
I mean, I think they all need to be done, it's just what kind of money can you give her that will start pushing her in the right direction? So do you want to say 60? Is it?
We can come back to that.
We come back to it.
Yeah.
it'll be easier when we get the total to come back.
The project 5 is the library carpet replacement at Adams Library.
I'm gonna say, I think we should have them do that as a 2-year project.
I won't try to influence anybody since I am a library trustee, but just to say that they did send out a breakout of phases, so phasing can be done by main floor, lower level, admin offices and children's room. So they have figured that out, so.
Okay. And
What's the number?
Do we have a cost estimate if we said?
Yep, it was, John passed it out, I sent it.
What's the number?
Looks like the main floor is, if you round it, 48,000.
50?
50,000,
50,000.
round number, 50,000 for now.
All right, 50 for now.
So
Oops,
the
oops.
main floor would be 50,000?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'd propose
Right.
50,000
Alright.
for, let's get the main floor started.
Got it, you have to have that.
Yeah, the police, I think that's a
Police.
definite,
Yeah.
from everything we heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Engine 4 is Project 7 for the fire department, 719,000.
I'm gonna, I hate to be pushy here, but I'm gonna say defer the fire
Mhm.
engine because there seems to be some sort of negotiations going on.
I support that, although I hate having that big fire truck go out all the time, but
I would concur with that.
Okay.
Okay, if everyone's in agreement with that, we'll defer, put that on the deferred list. Next item is DPW sidewalks, 325,000.
I propose we take some of the money out of that.
Killing us.
What?
That hasn't gone up in years.
I know.
I actually did
I mean, that's a small pot for a town this size with 220 miles of road. I think touching those three line items is just gonna push us further back, which
I agree,
seems to be a complaint already sometimes.
I agree.
I don't support it.
Can we come back to that, maybe?
Cut back on the sidewalks.
No, in other words, I know I'm having a problem
Yeah.
talking, I apologize.
It's
Can we,
okay.
can we come back to those three
Okay.
items? Leave those three items as they sit?
Yes.
We can come back at anything, sure. We can just plug them in for now,
Sure.
if that's what you
Yeah.
want to do.
Can any of that money be repurposed for the parking lots, sidewalks, or no? Can't do that?
No, it's a separate project.
On the drainage one, though, that's the one, the 100,000 on the drainage, I'm sorry to confuse the situation. That's only on there if the
Stormwater.
drain water, stormwater,
To be honest with you, right now, I'm eating $100,000 from this year because it didn't go through. You didn't give me the money
We didn't
because of
have-
that.
Right.
There's no division, so I'm out $100,000. And it's literally this year's drainage.
their general fund,
It needs to stay there until we know that
And
that
s-
division is
there is
gone.
no.
oh, okay, that, I was just raising the
Yeah.
question because I don't know what's
Sad-
gonna
And
happen.
sadly, here we are at December 1st, there's still been no resolution on the
Okay.
stormwater. So it's not going to start July 1, as far as I can see, because you'd have to give a lead time whenever they resolve that litigation over the standards for communities to respond. So and given what's going on in Washington with EPA and regulations,
It's a couple of years.
it may, yeah, maybe, it may.
Yeah,
you
okay, I
may
just
need it.
wanted
Based
to,
on what Gary and
It just
Paul
leaves me uncomfortable not to fund any
Okay.
drainage. That's the problem.
Yeah, based on what Paul and Gary said, I mean, I don't think it's prudent to assume we're not gonna have a stormwater enterprise fund brought up at the next town meeting unless something radically changes, so.
Agreed.
I think we could defer the heavy-duty truck. It's a big number.
We can come, okay.
It's a big number, but it sounded like the truck
It is.
is in need of major repair.
This
So
will be another one that eliminates 2 trucks.
Yeah, I know.
this one eliminates 2
There's a
trucks.
truck every year.
Yeah, we started doing it, we were getting the 10-wheel dumps, putting the sander body into it, so it gets multi-use versus straight sanders, which is what was used originally.
Why don't we,
It's had all winter. Summer.
why don't we put it, why don't we put nothing down and come back to it?
do we only have $900,000 left? Is that? am I
No,
re-
that's not amount borrowed. We're,
Oh, okay,
yeah, we've still got a couple million left.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The next item, Project 12, the cemetery fence replacement that was described, that was deferred last year. I think based on talking to David, I know he's looking for this, but I see this, I'm not sure I see this as absolutely critical at this year. We may try to explore a way to try to see if there's any possibility of assisting with his operating budget or cemetery funds.
Yeah, I would
So I,
propose deferring this.
I think it's worthy, but the money's just not there.
Community preservation, that wouldn't be, that doesn't really fall into that
It's really
bailiwick?
It's really maintenance.
I deferred the 3/4 ton pickup. I funded that,
The
That's
mower.
a replacement of really two machines.
yeah.
Yeah.
The roof, Gary's definitely a lock, huh?
Yeah, we have a roof track program, as you know. We're looking at the roof of this building next year, so if you defer this gets deferred, and that's 270. And we need to stay the way we're going. I mean, as
Right.
you know, there was a school with that roof.
Yeah, I agree with
On
you.
our last fire station this year.
Yeah, fund it.
Wait, where are you?
We're on Project 15, the senior center roof.
Oh, I'm all about that.
What did we do
Okay,
with
and we-
14?
What did we say about the snow
think they-
blower,
they
the
put
90?
Wide area.
We funded
mower.
it.
Yep.
Funded it
Oh,
93.
okay.
Again,
Yeah, okay.
we can come back, after.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
slept right through that.
Yeah, me too, okay, I'm on board with the lawnmower, snow blower.
How much are we short, Paul?
Well, I can plug in the rest of the numbers if you want. You can see where we are.
Yeah, plug them all in. Get three.
I think with the parking lots, ultimately, maybe we can only do one, I don't know.
So what's our number, Paul, we gotta get to? That looks, did you say 3.2?
Well, it's 3.2 with the less recaptured, so ideally, we're short $250,000.
Did you already deduct the recapture?
Yeah, it's right there. That's the,
Right, I can't see that well. So
Yeah,
did you put everything in the bottom in at full funding?
yeah, right now, because someone asked me where we stand. If
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
fund everything.
I have,
Yeah.
But we gotta go back and revisit.
Oh, yeah, right, I didn't,
Can you enlarge the screen just a smidge?
Can you blow
Oh,
it
up
up?
here.
Paul,
what's that?
can you expand that? Because, yeah, it's,
Oh, sorry. I had to go up one.
expand the screen.
And Paul, you're trying to get net amount borrowed to what number?
Ideally, it'd be the net number borrowed down to 3 million. 3-0.
So the total budget will be,
So-
add 180 to that?
I don't
I thought it
mean,
was 3.2 we had to get to.
You got the two already in there, the 180, 580.
Because the 180's already
How do
in
you-
there.
Yeah,
The 180's already being deducted off the bottom.
yeah, okay.
Or there might be a button right over
Oh,
here
right,
where it
so you
says
take that.
100%. Yep, just try to go up. There you go.
Yeah, problem is when I go up,
We can offer up something
Can
if
you
it's gonna
zoom?
help, and I think it would probably close your gap. I'm not, sorry to say, up for your funding of only one parking lot, but we did do the full survey of this, and the best part of what we own is the front of Chelmsford High School. So if we did the entire rear, eliminated the front, pushed it out till next year, you would take 410 off of that price.
Oh.
410,000, as long as we can come back and do it, and you are at the understanding that it won't be 410, it'll be more, because we expect increases in asphalt prices, increases in curb pricing.
I think
But
that's,
that would be a clean break that we could live with.
I think it's a
And
good
we
compromise.
just the front of the high school.
Leave it out for this year.
Would that be the entryway?
yeah, the entryway from Richardson.
That's from the driveway of,
From Graniteville,
Granville to,
Yeah.
Richardson, and no sidewalks there, because those are in the best shape, although they need some work.
So it's basically just back.
Well, the road, where you turn on the road to get down, okay, in between the fields, and the entire back coming up to Richardson Road.
Mhm. I think
All
that's
we
in
got.
much worse shape. And more heavily used.
But you're losing some, of course,
does that get you where you wanna be,
so
Paul?
that would,
Well, you're now below, you
Oh,
now
wow.
have,
Can I-
okay.
you now have
the
160,000.
number, Paul, actually, please, if you can, for the
Yep.
lots, be, 1,000,652.
How about you split, why can't you, if you-
650.
Well, splitting the
652.
lot in a
That-
different way, I don't like having scenes
that
like
what he
that.
said?
This does the entire
1,00652.
thing, and the only scene you have is where the road starts between the fields and the school.
652,000.
yeah, but if we have 160, let's say with that deduction, you're now under 160. You have 160 to play with, couldn't you take a portion of that 160 and divide the front in half?
Well, we're also,
You could, or you could apply it elsewhere and do the whole front as its own, and then your seaming is better, and you know.
I think we should go back to what we,
deferred though,
or partially funded.
because I think,
But we haven't
I
put any
think that's a
DPWs
really
in there at all.
great compromise, and that Parker gets fixed.
Because I would love to see.
Why do we have these
DPW,
numbers
you know,
of 196 and
and,
652?
you know,
I mean, it's kind of silly.
10 mil get back in there if it can. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Jay?
So-
Yeah, no, just round, I think the round number,
Probably be getting, we have
I think
Because I'm also gonna say,
if we did this, just to make things
the
round.
school is getting,
Can you zoom
you know,
that out?
all of their
Yeah, yeah.
technology
Yeah, I will.
stuff.
Zoom in, zoom out.
Plus-
Oops.
No, other way.
Parker and the back of the high
Right.
school
other way.
lot fixed,
You want
so
me to zoom it in?
that seems great. I'd go back to some of the deferred
But it's
stuff.
going
Zoom in.
smaller, they wanted it to go bigger, yeah.
So we can see,
Yeah, there's a little white space.
yeah.
What happens if
Yeah, here we
What
go.
happens if we gave up, for example, Dr. Lang, what happens if we gave up security camera upgrades, but we kept in, how far would we be away from the front of the lot?
Security cameras.
Wouldn't be, because security cameras
You
are
got
only
hundred and
40.
sixty plus 45, 200, right? You need another 200 then, right? Pretty close.
Okay, so what, we deferred the, what have we deferred? I would suggest go at the top, because we
Yeah.
Sure.
pumped that on some items. So, for number one, we're saying that we're gonna fund that at 40.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the
Because we have a source of switches, so.
Well, the assumption is we're gonna have recaptured switches, but not,
Right.
not all. Next,
So, the assumption with the switches works now because you have effectively given the school department all of their technology, on this list, all of their technology.
Right.
correct.
So they're getting all of their technology, and Gary has proposed the compromise.
They're getting all the technology, but they're giving up 60,000 in switches.
That they don't need anymore.
They don't need.
No, he said he could use them.
That's the town. We're gonna give them our old switches.
Right, right,
They can
right.
reduce their line.
But it's not that Bill doesn't need them, he's giving them up. He could use them, I think he said.
Yeah,
I will use 6, but most
Yeah.
so it's not really viable to assume that you can have switches transferred, old switches.
No,
Yeah.
from what Bill said, if he can give us 9 that are not end of life, those are the ones that we would take, and then that's how we can reduce that line item, the first line item.
Yeah.
All right, so
So I think we should look at the things that have, that we said we'd come back to later.
Right.
Because Kathy's point, which I agree, is that the school has really gotten everything they asked for except the front parking lot of the high school, so.
Part of the parking lot, yeah. So, the fiber extensions and security upgrades, fiber extensions really were at the request of the police department to have, support security cameras at additional locations. So items 2 and 3 somewhat go hand in hand, although 3, part of that could be deferred, correct, John?
Yes, Ted said that he could postpone the swipe card system, and that would reduce that by about 100,000.
so if you put
30 in that line
put
item.
30 in the security
Mhm.
upgrades, and you put, is it 59, Paul?
Yeah,
No, next
Oh,
one
sorry.
down, brother.
Yeah, but you're also including the work down at Southwell, so if you
Correct.
So
done,
do the whole 59 there,
yeah.
right?
Then the other thing that I'm thinking about is the
How we
truck
doing,
that
Paul?
Gary says he needs.
We got 70G?
oh, we're getting close.
Can I ask a question of Gary? That pickup truck for facilities was deferred last year, if my memory is right. How do you rank that with your dump truck? I mean, how is that,
Kathleen and I have had this conversation. I mean, as you know, when we come to people for vehicles, we don't usually just get rid of the last
45 in there,
vehicle.
that'll bring
What we
you-
have done in this case is
Put that 45 in there, that takes it.
replaced last year, given it to facilities
Right.
to
Yeah,
eliminate
close.
one van, which is issue because really doing trash in the van doesn't work, so that's like a holdover. So if it went into next year's and really got funded, it would not be an issue.
The pickup,
Yes.
okay.
So you want the pickup?
No.
Okay.
We're
No,
willing to
he-
go another
He's
year.
willing to
He
go.
says pinky promise on the driveway and the
Okay.
pickup truck.
Well, you got 70,000 left then, roughly.
Deferred. Okay, so what have we deferred?
The large truck, didn't we defer the large
We
truck?
don't have the money
That's
for the
too
large truck.
expensive.
That's too
So we have-
expensive.
Well, so we deferred that.
You didn't touch any of the DPW stuff. You didn't,
Right.
Wait, we did,
is
we
it
did
so
all
bad
the,
to have 70 left over, or do we have to spend it?
Left over, or,
We,
Yes.
so you have,
65? 40, 55 now?
so we got there because we
got
deferred,
180.
We got rid of the fire truck. We cut down on the
For
security
3-2.
upgrades. We gave her partial vault.
parking lot.
you could do
We got rid of
another
the
part
park.
of the library,
Did the vault.
Yeah.
just saying.
If you fund the vault, if you fund the vault, you get there. If you fund the vault,
You're right under.
no, I'm just saying, you're close, you're now within,
I mean, is there anything that's gonna pop up that you're gonna need something that we're not aware of, or,
To the parking
It's
lot.
really 410, 152 for the fund.
Paul?
what's that?
Is there anything that you're gonna, that extra 50 or 60,000? That was,
He's gotta get the 65 in there.
There's the $45,000 truck that he said he could go,
Paul,
Yeah.
you had 625 back to the parking lot.
Hang on, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I need all I can get to get it.
I'll round that
I'm
up.
just saying add the,
1.1.
why don't we add the 60,000 to his parking lot?
Yeah,
Or 1 million,
Yeah.
okay, just right.
yeah,
All right.
right,
how
there you
about
go.
1.1, round it up?
Can I ask just something crazy? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult, but, it's a couple $100, but can the technology infrastructure actually match the 376,220 instead of 375? Because we need our application, our re-rate application to have all the numbers match what we're asking for.
Right.
I know it's $1,000, but just.
of course, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I will say the one problem I'm having with that is that this is a 3-year request in the capital plan for about $1 million. As was pointed out by the other gentleman in the audience, we've spent several $100,000 over the past 2 years. So what I'm not seeing is any kind of an integrated plan that says, here's what we're gonna do. It's an ad hoc plan. A lot of money. Same thing with the 75,000. I thank you for saying this, future years, it sounds like you're gonna develop a plan, but we're spending 75,000 this year to finish. So this is the last year, essentially, of the technology, classroom technology.
And we agree, we said that last year.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's consistent.
so,
Moving forward.
I
You
mean,
need
I
a
think-
plan.
well, I think the whole network, I mean, I do this for a living, and I know we have an integrated plan for the entire company that we're building out. What I'm seeing is, and the comment was this, there's a budget-driven plan looking at individual schools. So while I've supported technology in the past a lot, I'm just, having some angst about just saying, here's $1 million over the next 3 years without a 3-year plan, saying this is what we're gonna be in 3 years, and these are the educational objectives that need to be met, that we can't meet without the expenditure. So, I mean, luckily, we were able to get some big-ticket items.
Are we where we need to be, Paul?
No.
What do we
Up
need
close,
to get to?
alright.
I thought we were.
What do you think? I mean,
Yeah, I think am I reading 3,050,000?
50,000,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking, if we're at this, I mean, we've been at 3 million for 6 years.
Mhm.
So you can see I'm getting a little bit of pliability, that I don't think we have a problem if we come in slightly over, because at what point do we get off of the 3 million?
Yeah,
Because it's,
yeah.
so I'm just trying to see if we're at a point where there's something critical. In other words, I don't wanna pull the 50,000 out of the library carpeting, and I don't wanna, we talked earlier about cutting into the DPW sidewalk and road improvements, you could grab 50 there, or the drainage, but then you're kinda like, I just think we're at a point now where we're comfortable, and I have no problem saying because 50,000, if we're borrowing it over 5 and 10 years, it's like,
Right.
it's not even a,
Right, it's
a rounding
spread
error.
out,
it's a
right.
rounding error, that's what I'm saying, so that's what I'm saying. I think we really wanna focus on what are we funding, and if we're within striking distance, I think we can make,
I think I would propose number one, I mean, we're assuming we have switches that can be repurposed, but we're not sure what technology will be repurposed and what the life of that is.
well, what if we did this?
So-
What if we funded it, and then you're at 3-1?
And if it's
Yeah, I
not
was gonna
spent, it'll be
suggest
turned
What if we-
back.
What if we funded it 3-1, and then you're there, because then you're funding the technology, and then you're not taking his switches away, and then you're basically
So
if
we're
you
deferring-
get
You
down the
know where you
list,
have to go if you have a problem.
right, if you get down the list,
Floor.
yeah, but even that, I mean, but really, what you've not funded on this thing is the DPW truck. I mean, everything else is, you're pretty much, you're in,
I gave that up and lost the truck.
right, I mean, I think you're there.
That's 2 trucks.
Paul, going forward, what is the shall we say, standard percentage that you spend on capital based on your budget? What is the,
Well, right now,
Industry
your
standard, so to
budget's
speak.
about, your budget's about 128 million, and you're spending 3 million on capital, but what you really look at, the industry standard is more of your debt service as a whole of the budget.
Okay.
And when you start factoring that in, we're about where we need to be. Because as John knows, our debt service is, particularly non-excluded debt service, you really want to be in that 10%, 12% range, so you're
And
about
we've done a
there.
lot of building projects
Yeah.
lately that are non-excluded, so that's why we're trying to limit that.
right?
And
How much was Parker?
Parker, I'm sorry,
190.
Parker paving?
Yeah.
Yeah, I put it in at 190, yeah. I think yeah.
Can't
Thank
even
you.
get to, I can't even get to the whole high school if we got rid of Parker.
No.
I don't think you should get rid of Parker, that's a liability issue
And,
when you're
and
talking.
and really, I think you come back, I mean, the front of the high school isn't that bad, as was noted earlier. When you come in like the main entrance off Richardson, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, to the point where you say, oh my gosh, this is, like when you buy the stadium, you're like,
Just know we'll be here to support it.
you have to be there next year, you have to be.
Yeah.
You can do it,
Will that be on the, for next year?
without a doubt. Probably a little higher than 410 because of cost.
And with a truck.
Yeah, it's probably 450 next year or something, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be on there.
Someday you'll get a truck for Christmas.
Do we have any other school parking lots or other big parking lot projects?
Well, we're gonna start to have areas of parking lots. The problems you run into is if you look at, Ryan now, the rear of the parking lot where the buses go around constantly starts to deteriorate. Same thing's happening in the part of center. So, I mean, you might be able to do one capital project that really does sections of multiple buildings. But all of them have been done at least once since I've been here, complete except for Parker, which we're talking about in high school.
John, should we take a vote?
Yes, I was gonna ask if there were no more questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the list of projects that's shown on the monitor, so if someone wants to make that motion. Moved by Maggie, and the total amount, the net amount to borrow is 3.1 million. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kathy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous? Great. We just have one quick piece of business. The minutes of November 17th, I emailed out to everyone. Did everyone have a chance to look at those?
I did read them, so I will
Okay.
move to accept.
Maggie moves to accept. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kathy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes unanimously approved. I do not, anyone have any comments or questions? If there's no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Maggie, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. And we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.